morning. Officially, good morning and welcome to some Yoga Pilates Fusion. So we're gonna start, of course, the way I like to start almost anything, these days especially. We're gonna start lying down. Now, you can just lie down with no other extra fun or wrinkles of any sort. But if you have some extra props around and you want to add on, you can do a little rolled up blanket. I'm going to put this one down the length of my spine, so I'm going to go long ways. And that will also support my head. Now the bottom of the blanket can be right up against your sacrum, or it can be up a little higher up your back. I like mine somewhere like at the bottom of the rib cage. There's a little space there for my low back to kind of curve the way it wants to. But, you know, depending on what you're using, it might be more comfortable if it's a little lower or a little higher. You could substitute a block under the shoulder blades if you like. And then I'm going to test out a couple of different leg positions. So this is option one, which is a kind of constructive rest position. You can put the feet together, drop the knees open. That is kind of nice. And then you can also have the legs out straight, which for me just slightly increases the amount of back bend sensation there is in the pose. It sort of feels like it lifts my ribs a little bit higher. And that's just the way that my hip flexors create the structure here. Yours might be different. And then take a few moments. So what I like about lying on the floor for me is that it makes my rib cage move in a different way because the floor is providing some resistance to the breath. So I can become just a little bit more aware of getting the ribs and the navel moving as I'm breathing. So making the breath a little deeper than it might normally be. Do about 2 more breaths here. And again, I'm just trying to get my ribs moving, really try to breathe nice and deep. I haven't really changed, so I'm going to change the position on this blanket. I'm going to take the blanket out and come back so I can experience the changeover that's happened here. So right now it feels like there's still kind of an impression left behind by the blanket. And as I pause here, that is all going to settle back down, and it gives me a kind of lovely lovely kind of expanding feeling across my upper back. So I'm going to try to kind of use that to my advantage to try to keep my upper back steady on the floor, bringing the knees in. I'm going to position my knees so that I have to use the lower abdominals to hold myself steady, so my low back isn't going to arch. So kind of over the top rim of the pelvis, and then bring in the legs over to one side, in this case my right side. I'm going to then curl my knees in. You could also straighten one leg out or straighten out both legs to add a little bit more on. And I'm just trying to keep my shoulders nice and broad and anchored, coming back to the center, and then bringing the knees into the chest, curling in with those lower abdominals, coming over to the side, curling in or straightening out the legs. So you can do which one, which version of this is the right version for you. We'll use it to warm up our obliques, and that center band of the abdominals as well as our back. Now when I'm going back and forth for some reason, it causes me to slowly travel down my mat. So I'm just accommodating that way by pressing my shoulders into the mat as best I can and just repositioning as needed. I'm going to do one more complete set when I finish this one. Now, I'm going to take myself over to the right and settle into a twist. And while I'm hanging out with this twist, I'm going to just kind of try to use the muscles here on the sides of my waist to rotate my shoulders a little bit more toward the floor and simultaneously kind of roll my hip around toward the right. Just trying to do that with these muscles here on the center. I can just use gravity and hang out as well. I'm just trying to be a little more active with those muscles without causing any trouble. Now, because I'm using these muscles, my diaphragm is slightly restricted, so I'm having to use some of those muscles in between my ribs to get the breath to be as deep as possible. So I'm just feeling some of that work we did earlier. Take in 2 more breaths. Now I'm just going to relax these muscles and then bring everything back to the center. I'm going to pause there for a moment. Come back up my mat. Now, it still feels like it would be the better idea to go that way. So before I go to the opposite twist, I'm just letting the sensation sort of settle. So when I take my legs to the left, there's no real difference compared to the right. A second ago it was easier to go to the right. Now it's pretty even. So that tells me I have settled. A lot of the changes have settled in my back, so I can do the other side more comfortably and a little bit more kindly to my spine. So again, I'm using my obliques to roll my upper body toward the ground and then also simultaneously to try to bring my hip around to the left. So a lot of action happening there. And again, because I'm doing that with these muscles that wrap around the sides of my waist, I'm restricting my diaphragm a little bit, so I'm trying to encourage my ribs to move as I breathe. Just doubling down on our very first arrangement here. So I'm going to take 2 more breaths. Coming back to the center, I'm going to pause there, grab my right leg, stretch my left leg out, and while my back is kind of settling, I can spin my right foot in circles, get a little love for my ankle joint going, go the opposite direction. I'm going to point and flex, and as I'm moving my ankle joint in that movement, I'm also trying to get a little movement going in between my toes, maybe even in the ball of my foot. All right. And then I'm going to test out a hamstring stretch here. So you If I can straighten out that leg, and I do a little bit of a pulse with it, kind of straighten the leg, and then hug it in, and straighten it, and then hug it in. All right, I'm gonna straighten it one more time. Now, keeping this leg, just, you can point the toe or flex the foot, that's up to you. But I'm gonna take the opposite leg and make sure that the toes are pointing up, and it feels sort of like I'm standing in mountain pose but lying down. So I'm digging my heel in just a little bit. I'm gonna squeeze in the sides of my waist, press my upper back and shoulders into the floor, and now I'm gonna try to keep my body completely still as I take my leg across and make whatever the biggest circle I can make and still keep my hip joint happy. So the leg is trying to pull me off balance, and I'm trying to use all of the muscles in my body to hold myself steady. So one more of those. Then we're going to change the pattern and go out to the side, bring the legs together and come straight up the middle. And again, trying to resist letting the hip move by using all the muscles in my torso. All right, I'm going to do one more of those. All right, so now, once I get to the top, bring in the knee in, I'm going to give it a little hug, and then stretching out through this other leg. Now, I'm going to leave that leg elevated, but if for whatever reason it feels like your low back is not going to be happy with you, you can put the leg that we're stretching out, because this is called the single straight leg stretch. You can, put it down near the ground or hover it a little bit differently, hover it a little higher or a little lower. So I'm going to curl my torso up, and I'm doing that not with my neck muscles, but with my abdominal muscles. You can bring your hands behind your head if you tend to overdo things with the neck muscles, or reach down towards your heels. And again, just decide on the angle that this leg should stretch out at. We're going to curl up a little bit extra, and then stretch. And again, we're curling from the abs. We're squeezing out all that air, curling in. Carry on. Exhale through your mouth to get that diaphragm out of the way. Two more sets. Now I'm going to grab that left leg now that I'm here, and let that right leg rest, and then spinning my left foot in circles. Trying to work with that ankle joint, and then go the opposite direction. And then we're going to point and flex. Try the hamstring stretch, see how that goes. Straightening out the leg, seeing how far it's willing to straighten. Kind of hug it in, and then try straightening it again. Bend that knee and hug it in. All right, straightening it one more time, and again I'm going to let go of it, and turning the leg that's on the floor so the toes point up, hugging in the sides of my waist, pressing my upper back into the floor. I'm going to come across and make as big a circle as I can without causing any movement, especially in the pelvis. One more that way. And then coming out to the side, bringing the legs together, coming straight up the middle. Again, we're using the abdominal muscles as stabilizers here. Two more. All right, so bringing the knee in, and we're going to bring the right one in. And again, we're going to do a stabilizing exercise. So I'm going to curl myself in, and I'm going to try to hold this flexed spine. So not holding it with my neck muscles, but holding it with the abdominal muscles. And then we'll extend the arms and legs out, or just the legs, as the case may be, so that we are creating that trick, that resistance to holding this flexed spine. Right on? All right. So trying to hold it steady as we extend out and curl back in. 2 more. All right, now I'm putting my head back down on the floor, releasing my abdominals a little bit, trying to relax for just a moment. So you can do a little bit of movement if that seems like a good idea. Now we're going to get ourselves to a seated position, and we'll do that through the roll-up. So the roll-up can be one continuous movement where you roll yourself up one vertebrae at a time, and that ideally there's this point where we can use the abdominal muscles to get ourselves here, and then we're going to try to, like the hip flexors are going to take over to bring us up. And often we get to that point, there's this kind of thrusting forward to try to get up. So if you can avoid that little thrusting forward, that's ideal. And then you'll see it again, because on the way down, the hip flexors are working, and there'll be that little drop, right? Where then the abdominals have to take over. So you can certainly do it that way. I'm going to divide it into half just to make myself do more of the concentrated work. So I'm going to bring myself up, keeping my head back as far as it'll let me. I'm going to do 2 more of those. And then, hello. And then I'm going to come up the rest of the way and do the second half of this, which is stretching over the legs. And again, like I'm trying to feel this in a back-friendly way. Then I'm going to come up and curl in and lower as far as I can without my hip flexors really having to kick on to stabilize me. So I'm going to try to make myself use my abdominals. Again, try to drive that just with the abs. And so you'll carry on with whichever one you're doing. I'm going to do 2 more of these. And then once you bring yourself up to a seated position, so if you're kind of on your last roll up, once you get up here and you've stretched over your legs, then we're going to pause. So I'm coming around. Now, the legs are a little bit wide, but not necessarily as wide as they can go. We just want a base. If it helps to sit up on the edge of a blanket or put something under the knees, you're welcome to do that. What we're aiming for is for the pelvis to be neutral and for the spine to not feel like it's flexing or kind of tilting forward and extending. We'll try to get the pelvis nice and neutral. Now everybody's spine is a little different, so you'll work with whatever your spine, whatever little individual contributions your spine makes to your overall anatomy. So we're going to take the arms out wide and turning, if possible, and turning to the side. We're going to again use the obliques to turn a little bit more and then a little bit more and come back. And that's kind of a pulsation. So in 1, 2, I'm just seeing how far around I can get with each pulsation without causing trouble for my back. And again, not directing this from the shoulders, but directing it from the abdominals. 1, 2, 3, using the abs to get that last little bit. 2, 3. Each time we come back to the center, just get a little taller. 1, 2, 3. And you can count on your own those little pulses. If for any reason the pulses are troublesome, they cause a little bit of discomfort, just hold it. 3 for that little 3 count. Okay, we're gonna do a couple more sets. 2, 3, nice and tall. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. It's a little easier for me to twist to my left than my right. So when I come to the right side, we're gonna do with this last set. I just try to concentrate a little bit more on making sure I'm using my abs and not my shoulders. All right, so bringing the arms down. We're gonna bring ourselves up to all 4s. Now, I'm gonna start with my fingertips all pointing forward, but a little bit spread out, and do some of these little up and down movements with the spine. I can emphasize the upper back a little bit. Or I can emphasize the lower back by doing more of the work with the pelvis. So you can kind of pick for yourself. Or do both, some of each. And now I'm gonna turn my hands so that my fingertips point out. Do a couple more rounds. So this puts a little different pressure in my wrist and around my thumb. I'm stretching my thumb forward just a little bit. And this is tricky, so you can do this or not do this. So I'm gonna turn one hand around so that it's quite intense on the wrist. And then releasing that hand, I'll do the opposite side. Now, we're going to take ourselves into a little downward facing dog. Now, downward dog can be, you know, it's some people's favorite pose, but some of us maybe not our favorite pose. So we'll work with what we can. And if it's not your favorite, then don't do it as long. Come to a forward bend for a bit. If it's your jam, then give yourself a little bit of time to walk back and forth, or move the hips, or add some little squatting motions as you see fit. Now, putting all my weight in my feet, giving my wrist one more little shake out while I'm hanging upside down. This feels really nice. And then coming up halfway, and then all the way to standing. I'm gonna give myself a nice big stretch up here at the top. Oh. Okay. Now, we need a couple more moments to get that together. Take a couple more moments. And then once you find a mountain pose, just pause for a moment and feel. So try spreading out the toes a little bit and then putting them back down. Try bending the knees a little bit. And then coming to a place where the knees aren't really bent, but they're not locked out. Try lengthening through the waist a little bit and relaxing through the shoulders. Arms turned out, arms relaxed. See which one is more interesting today, and then see what happens if you try to get the weight in your feet distributed evenly between the ball of the foot and the heel, the right side and the left side. And then just take stock. Are there any muscles you can feel kind of kicking on or a little bit active? And we'll come back and see if they're the same in a minute. So we're gonna take a nice big breath, reach the arms up, grabbing hold of that right wrist. We'll give ourselves a little stretch over to the left. Now coming back, we're gonna take this right hand to the floor. So if that feels like it's too far down, you can certainly use a piece of furniture or a block. We're gonna pick the left foot up and take it back behind us. just a moment and see what happens if we try to take both hands off the floor and reach back with the hands into a warrior three balance, trying to keep the hips balanced. So if I need it, I'm going to keep that right hand steady. Today it feels like a good idea. Take in one more breath. We're going to step back and hopefully catch a warrior one pose without tipping myself off onto my face. So back heel is on the ground. There's a little bit of an angle to that. My hips are not pointing directly forward. And then, I position myself so that my front knee feels like it's in a good steady place. Now we're going to bring the arms up and then bring the elbows back and then push forward. So arms up, elbows back, push forward. One more of those. Now we're going to wrap the arms around behind us, and you can lace your fingers together or grab a wrist or do a reverse prayer if you care to. And then straightening out the front leg, we'll fold and see how far we get, either folding forward or straightening out the leg. This is between you and your hamstrings. And there might be a little bit of a wobble because the arms are bound, so let go if you need to catch. I'll take 2 more breaths here. I'm going to release my arms. Now the left hand is going to be the one on the floor. So if I want to use the block, I can do that. I'm going to tilt myself forward, pick up the left leg again. Left hand's down. I'm going to take that right arm up and stretching between those 2 points, kind of creating a spinal balance. And then curling in and stretching out. Curling in, stretching out. One more time, curling in, stretching out. I'm going to bring that left foot to the ground and come up halfway, and exhale if you care to, fold all the way in and then come all the way up to standing and give yourself a nice big stretch at the top here. Pausing for just a moment in that mountain pose, see if there's a difference between the left and the right. Nice big inhale, the arms are going to go up and we're going to grab that left wrist and stretch over to the right. Nice big inhale back to the center. Exhale, fold. So again, I'm going to put my left hand on this block, pick up my right foot, and extend that leg back and try to get my hip level. And then I'm just going to test out the waters. Can I do it with no hands? And then I'm going to try to land in a warrior one. Once I feel like I've got a steady place, I'm going to bring the arms up, bring the shoulders back, and then push forward. Arms up, shoulders back, push forward. One more of those. All right, so then I'm wrapping my arms around. Now last time I grabbed my left wrist, so this time I'm going to grab my right wrist, taking a nice big breath, and folding in. I'm going to straighten out my front leg and see how that goes. Take a nice big breath and releasing my hands. Again, I'm going to change this. So putting the block under my right hand, left leg and right hand are going to take the body weight. And then I'm going to reach my left arm forward for a little spinal balance. Curl in, bring the knee and elbow toward each other, stretch out. Curl in, stretch out, curl in. Stretch out one more time. And then I'm going to bring that right leg down. Come up halfway. Exhale, fold in. Come all the way up to standing. Give yourself a nice big Stretch. And then find your mountain pose one more time. And notice if there's a difference from the first mountain we did, and also from the in-between mountain. Taking a nice big breath, reaching the arms up. We're going to come to a chair pose. Now your chair pose can be quite light, or you can sink way down into the chair, bringing the hands to the heart. Take a big breath. We're going to twist towards the right. You can bring that left elbow around or your left hand around towards your right knee. See what happens if you keep the pelvis stable versus letting that left hip come forward. There might be reasons to do both. I'm trying to make my spine do more of the work, so keeping my pelvis as steady as I can. And one more nice big breath here, or not so big. Coming back to the center, I'm going to put all my weight into this right leg. I'm going to pick that leg up and step back into a warrior two. Okay, so finding that warrior two pose, and then we're going to add our mermaids in here. So coming back to reverse and over to side angle, focusing on lengthening through the side waist. One more of those. Now, I'm going to straighten out my front leg, come back in reverse, and then come into triangle pose. And you can do a more traditional version of the triangle pose. I've lately been very much fond of doing a half a bind, so you could add that in, or choose something else for yourself. Stretching out my toes a little bit and putting them back down. I'm just playing gently with how long I can make my spine feel. Twisting a little bit from my ribs. Seeing how my hip responds to those ideas. So the movements are small, but there's still a little bit of movement with each breath. And 2 more breaths. Now, we're going to come around to a wide angle forward bend. So I'm going to let go of everything and bring my right foot all the way around. And then finding the distance between my feet that feels interesting, appropriate. I'm going to let myself kind of dip into this forward bend. Now, this is 1 of 2. We're going to do another one on the other side. So this one could be a little more like a rag doll. You can grab your big toes and pull your elbows out. You can walk your hands through. You could add some movement. So you get to decide. And the 2 versions can be different. Right now I'm just sort of hanging out and noticing the difference between my 2 hips right now. And as that is sort of shifting a little bit and softening, I'm going to take 1 more breath. Now we're going to walk the hands around to the front and step back to down dog. And you can stay right there, or you can add in the sun salutation, coming forward, lowering in some capacity, doing a back bend, and then coming back to down dog. Once we get there, we'll all take that right leg up. We're going to bring it towards this upper right arm and then round through the back and hug in the navel. And then take that leg all the way back, sink through your left heel if you can. And then we'll step that foot forward. Now, wherever it landed, if you need to make an adjustment, you can. But we're going to turn this into a half moon balance. So I'm going to reach out, pick up my left leg, and try to stack my left hip up on top of the right one. And then balance if I can without knocking any plants over. Taking 2 more breaths here. I'm going to bring my left foot in and put it down. Come up halfway and fold. And then I'm going to come all the way up to standing, give myself a nice big stretch. little bit of a shimmy. And then I'm going to find that mountain pose again. And again, I just did a bunch of stuff on one side that I haven't done the other side yet. So noticing any differences. Taking a nice big breath, stretching up. Oh, come into chair pose, whatever version of the chair pose fits you. Bringing the hands to the heart, I'm going to twist to my left. And again, you could wrap the arm around if that feels like the right thing to do. Taking one more breath. Oh, we're going to come around, pick up this right leg, and step ourselves back into our warrior two. And again, kind of finding that pose where you like your hip to be, etc. And then add your mermaids into the mix. One more of those. And then I'm going to straighten out my front leg and turn this into a triangle pose. And again, I'm just going to make these little micro adjustments while I'm holding the pose. Just feeling for all the little places where the pose could have a slightly different flavor, slightly different sensation. Even just a tiny change in the hip can make a difference. 2 more breaths. And again, I'm going to kind of release this pose and bring myself around to the wide angle. I'm going to turn my toes out a little bit this time and let my wide angle just wobble towards a kind of half squat. Oh. Again, you have choices. You can do whatever you like with yours. You want to hold it still, you want to add movement. It can be a movement where your legs stay straight as well. All right, one more to each side for me. And then I'm going to pause in the center for one more big breath. And then we're going to walk this guy around and step back into down dog. And then again, you can hold that dog or add in the sun salutation with however many extra plank bells and whistles you like. Once we get there, we're going to take that left leg up, bring it in, curl up around it, really drive that navel in, and then, drive, stretch that leg back, sink into your right heel if you can, and then we'll step the left leg forward. Now, we're putting all the weight on that left leg to come into the half moon balance. Stacking everything up. Try to get light on my left hand if I can. Everything else kind of reaching for the ceiling until I fall. Taking one more breath. I'm going to bring this right leg in, put it down, come up halfway, and fold. Come all the way up to standing. Give yourself a big stretch. And then a little shimmy, and we find our way back to mountain pose. One last time, at least this morning. So we're gonna notice where that's left us here. Is mountain pose different than it was at the beginning? Now we're gonna come from mountain pose directly to boat pose, well, pretty directly. So to get there,
I'm gonna squat as deep as I can, and then not so gracefully sit down and come right to my boat. If you can do it gracefully, cool. That would be awesome. And I'm a little envious. So I'm gonna squat as deep as I can here and pause briefly because that's nice. And then I'm gonna sit myself down and come to my boat pose. If you want to turn this boat pose into a teaser, you can do that. Lift the heart. We'll add a little pulse. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now coming to the end of a boat pose. A stable position. Just pause for a moment and notice. If you're still doing the teaser, carry on for as long as you like. Now we're going to turn this into a pigeon, and I have a couple of options. So I could leave my right leg kind of in this position that it's in right now and swing my left leg behind me, and that will put me into this kind of belly towards the floor version. Or you could lean back and put your right leg up on top and do a seated version. Or you can lay on your back and put your right leg up on top and do a reclining version. So that's up to you. And the foot can be closer in if your knee and your hip accommodate. Whatever setup here is fine. There's no right answer to that setup. Now this is quite an intense stretch in the hip for some of us, and some of us will find that once we get into one version, we change our mind. And that's okay, you're allowed. You're allowed to change your mind and go for a different version. Now, because this can be an intense pose, I'm actively trying to relax as deeply as I can around my face, around my mouth, through my shoulders, and even down deep into my abdominal muscles and my hips. Now, if I get messages from my hips that I should get out of here, I'm definitely going to follow those messages. That would feel like sharpshooting pain. It would feel like numbness, burning, tingling. So far, so good. But we'll see. I'm going to make mine a little more of a back bend here, which definitely changes the dynamic. You could bend this back knee and hold onto that foot if you like. So we're going to take 2 more breaths. Now, I'm going to set my blocks off to the side. I'm going to lean into my right hip and just roll myself onto my right side, kind of straightening that leg out. So now that I'm on my right side, I'm going to keep going so that my head is supported in a way that feels appropriate to my neck, whatever that might be for you. If I bring my legs further back and elevate them off the floor for part of these moves, this will require my core to do more work to hold me stable. If I press my bottom leg into the floor, still in that same position, I now have more stability. If I were to bend that knee, now I have the maximum amount of stability that I can achieve, at least through leg positioning. The hand can come up front for stability, on the hip a little less, lifting up toward the ceiling with your arms, so you're requiring a little bit more work for your upper body. Much less stability. So you'll have to really rely on your abs to create the stabilization. All right. So taking this top leg, a little pointy toed, we're going to go up and then flex the foot and come down, and I'm stretching through my leg to try to make it a little bit longer. So that's the movement pattern. Trying to hold the torso nice and stable. Sides of the waist are drawn toward each other. We'll do 2 more of these. And again, I'm trying to reach that leg out there as I come down. Now, I'm only going to come up to just a little bit higher than my hip. I'm going to leave my toes pointing slightly out. You can also rotate your leg a little bit so the toes point a little more forward and see how that works for your hip. And then I'm going to swing this leg forward and back. And I don't have to swing it very far forward and back. Like I can add more of that stretch on, or I can do a smaller pattern. But my task is to try to swing this leg forward and back and not move through my torso. So I'm trying to stabilize with my abdominals. And this one is a little harder for me to keep stable. My torso definitely wants to shift positions. And we're going to do 2 more of those. All right, coming back to the center, bringing both feet together. I'm going to bend at the knee and then lift the feet. So there's a tendency for the hip to want to dip forward. See if you can keep that hip stacked up and just let that thigh dip forward so we have an internal rotation right here at the hip. Then we're going to turn it the other way, externally rotate it, kick that out. Maybe. If that bothers your knee, just hold it steady and then bring it together. All right. Nice and smooth like you're underwater, so the knee is extending in a smooth way rather than abruptly. The good news is in a minute, after we've tortured this left hip, we're going to do a little pigeon. And that will fix us up just right. 2 more of these. So we're going to stretch the leg out. This leg can simply just move forward so it's out of your way. I like to put the foot on the ground, so I've got a little more of a spot there, but this tends to want to lean my hip back, so I'm just being conscious of that. Lifting the bottom leg, and then feeling that inner belly, try to lift my leg a little bit more. I'm going to pulse it up for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hovering there will make some kind of a circle or a figure 8. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go in the opposite direction. You can go slower or faster. Just count your own. 2, 3, 4, 5. Coming back, bringing that leg down. Now I'm going to stretch this guy out and roll back onto my, into my seated position. I'm going to turn around 180 degrees, so I'm just going to go forward and then go this way. So we're going to come into that pigeon going the other way. So if you were doing a seated one, you'll do that from here. And if you were doing the laying down version, you could probably stay on your back. Hopefully you knew that. All right. So then, now my left leg is the forward leg here for my pigeon pose. Definitely noticing all that work I just did with that hip and trying to relax into the stretch. Stay for about 3 more breaths. Okay, I'm going to take a big inhale. And then I'm going to kind of roll towards this left hip and just straighten that leg out as I come onto my left side. And again, I just am going to choose where I'm positioning my legs and squeezing in through the side of the waist, how I'm positioning my hand. I'm gonna point through the toes and bring my leg up and then extend that leg out as I flex through the foot. So, trying to hold the torso nice and steady. Two more of those. And then I'm gonna let that leg lift just a little bit. Again, try to make sure my hips are nice and steady. And then we're swinging that leg forward and back, drawing in nice and tight through the abdominals to hold stable. So whoops, however far it lets me go, I am trying to hold myself nice and steady. And two more of those. Bringing the legs together, I'm going to bend at my knees so my feet are back. Lifting the feet, I've got my hip nice and steady. I'm going to open the knee, extend it, bring it back, and close it up. And again, hugging in through the sides of the waist, so we're not leaning this hip backwards at all. Holding that steady line with the leg. Good, four more of those. Stretching the legs out. We're going to bring that guy forward. Alright, so then I just reposition my hips so it's nice and steady, lifting that leg that's on the bottom, engaging nice and deep through the abdominal muscles and my hip flexors. And then pulsing for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Holding there for a circle. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go in the opposite direction. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Bringing that leg down, I'm going to come back to my seated position. So bringing my legs up front and sitting up tall. All right. From here, we're going to take the legs into either a butterfly position or a wide angle. That's up to you. Everyone's a little different. So I'm leaning forward and then just lifting each sit bone just to make sure there's no resistance to my pelvis moving forward. And I'm going to do lots of action in my legs. So my toes are turned up. I've bent my knees a little bit. I'm engaging my quads. And then I'm going to come forward and lengthen through my torso. And some of us, the way our pelvis is constructed, the hips won't really want to move forward, so there's a tendency to try to round in the back. Rather than do that, see if you can keep your spine nice and tall. I'm just holding onto my big toes so I can push them into my hands a little bit. And it helps keep my quads engaged, which sometimes get a little lazy when I'm not paying attention to them. So we're going to take 2 more breaths here. And then I'm going to release that guy, come all the way up. Oh, give myself a little shake. Now we're going to roll ourselves onto the back for a little final relaxation. And I know some of you guys might head out before final relaxation, so namaste. And thanks for joining me. But if you're up for it, Shavasana is delicious. So a final relaxation can't be beat. We're going to roll ourselves down to maybe a little happy baby or just a little windshield wipery leg, just to release any residual tension from the forward bend that the spine may not love changing shape so fast. And then I'm going to put this pillow underneath my legs because that makes laying on my back so much nicer. And puts a little flex at my hip, and it's nice. So if you have that issue too, where your low back feels like it arches off the floor, try a pillow or a blanket under your legs. And then we're going to let the body relax. Now, the reason this is in the practice is so that we can begin to feel how the nervous system might shift from this kind of active state of noticing all this muscle interaction and all of this pushing and pulling and action and whatnot to a very relaxed, peaceful state. So we're going to try to feel ourselves shift gears. To help with that, relax your face muscles as much as you can. The nerves that control the muscles in your face also control the relaxation response or part of it. Relax the lips and the jaw a little. And let your eyes get a little heavier, a little kinder. Feel yourself relax through the shoulders. Maybe it might require a little adjustment, but maybe not. Feel the chest muscles let go a little bit, or try. And we've been using the abdominal muscles with all sorts of action, but we're going to try to let them get really soft now. Really let go through the abs so that the breath can just move the belly. Maybe we can feel that breath a little deeper in the belly now. And feel yourself let go at the hip socket, the inner thigh, calf muscles, and even the toes. Use an audible sigh to relax a little bit more deeply. And just let yourself hang out in that relaxed place. Gently, we're just going to notice the breath again.
Next time your inhale comes along, take that breath in nice and deep. Let it go with a sigh. And you can start to move, open your eyes. We're going to join each other in a seated position. So thank you so very much for joining me on a nice bright morning for some yoga Pilates fusion. Let's take a nice big breath and a big deep sigh. Namaste, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.